Senator Whelan, you have 6 minutes.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I too would like to welcome Minister Bruton to the House. And indeed, I think it is a timely and topical debate. I'd like to put on the record at the outset, as other speakers have said, that I've not only the utmost of respect for Senator Fergal Quinn, not alone as a captain of industry and an entrepreneur, but as you say, a commendable employer and who sets the highest standards and the best standards in that regard. And indeed, he has the support and backing of Senator Barrett, who also, commands our respect when he speaks, and we take what they say seriously. However, I have to say that not all employers are as decent and as Senator Fergal Quinn, and not all employers are as forthcoming and as decent with their employees. So we have to look at this in the context and in the round. And I think it is important that perhaps, that it's fortunate that the immediate threat has been diffused, because I think were we discussing it in that climate, it could take on a different tone. And I also want to put on the record that I totally understand, if you like, in a fashion, the motivation preceding what occurred over the last few weeks, because we all feared and were not looking forward at all to the prospects of any breakdown in industrial relations within the ESB that would wreak havoc in the run-up to Christmas on families, on the elderly, on the infirm, and then also on our economy and our international reputation. The damage it would do, it doesn't bear thinking about. And for certainly, there's a great sense of relief that this immediate threat has passed. And I'd like to commend both sides in the dispute, and indeed the tremendous work of the Labour Relations Commission and the good work it did there behind the scenes in diffusing this immediate problem, because it would have certainly wreaked havoc on the economy in the run-up to Christmas, and I think thereafter the damage would have reached far into next year and damaged our economic recovery in its fragile state that it is. And I'd also like to put on the record that it was stated, confirmed during the week, that some of the trade union officials, I won't name anyone on the record of the House, received personal serious threats and their families. And that too, is despicable and appalling, because no one deserves to be personally vilified for representing the workers or for what they believed in, even if we don't agree with the extent to which they were willing to push it. Because I too feel that the threat of strike action in this instance was disproportionate to the nature of the problem, and I'm glad it has been resolved. It is perhaps ironic that we're having this debate and this discussion, and perhaps more appropriate doing so on the 100th anniversary and the centenary of the lockout. So it is no harm to reflect on the context and the progress that has been made by both sides, if you like, in our society. Also, I think it's interesting that we're having this debate this week against the backdrop of Nelson Mandela's funeral and passing, and all the plaudits and commendations that have been passed on to the Dunn Stores workers who took a courageous stand back in 1984. And I think it's important to put on the record, I don't think Nelson Mandela realised just how many friends he had in Ireland. He's certainly an awful lot more lads who are on his side today than were on his side back then. And the same goes for the Dunn Stores workers. A lot of people jumping on that particular bandwagon who weren't as praiseworthy of those young women at that time. So, history has a funny way of looking back on things. And, history is certainly judging the Dunn Stores workers well for their courage and their perseverance. But not all those who are commending them today were as foursquare behind them at the time. And I'm minded that over the weekend we saw the very sad sight of Marks and Spencer's workers out on the side of the street picketing in the run-up to Christmas. And again, it was mostly women on the picket line. I met them and I discussed it with them. And they felt as well that they didn't want to be there, but felt they needed to be there and had to be there because their work and terms and conditions, their pension entitlements, their holiday pay, and their weekend rates were under serious threat. And, I know no worker who wants to be out on strike or on the picket line. And I know that this bill in particular refers to the utilities and that, but I think we have to see things in the round.
Senator.
I myself, unfortunately, spent some time on the picket line. I'm a member of the NUJ since the time I was 17. And I can tell you, no one really wins in a strike situation. And therefore, I think it's important to note on the record the serious progress that has been made in this country in terms of industrial relations. In the 1970s, we lost 58,000 days per annum due to strikes. We became known as the sick man of Europe. The basket case of Europe, in fact, we were referred to. In the 1980s, it improved, but not terribly much. It was down to 32,000 days per annum being lost in that decade due to strikes. But industrial peace and the negotiations and the industrial relations mechanism has really improved that significantly. And both employers and the trade union movement have to be commended for that. And employees have dug deep, I want to say, to help this country rebuild after the fiasco of the bank bailout. So I would not like to see us squandering that progress by, if you like, criminalising or vilifying workers who feel that that as a last resort they might have to go on strike. In fact, I've often said that, in my view, one of the best unions in the country, in fact maybe the best, is the IFA, who are fantastic, and rightly so, at looking after the interests of their members and the farming community and the rural community. So I think that we are all pleased and relieved that the ESB strike has been diffused, but let's be clear about it. Justice Peter Kelly in the Commercial Court back in October said there was a 1.8 billion deficit in the pension fund, and the workers feared for the very funds that they were saving for, and many workers in this country have been shortchanged by pensions collapsing and people saving prudently, I'll finish now, all their working lives, to find out after 30 and 40 years of service, after doing the right thing, that the funds are not there to meet their requirements and their families' requirements in their retirement. So while I understand in good faith where Senator Fergal-Quinn is coming from, I could not support the bill on the basis that it would take away, in my opinion, and it could be seen as a provocative piece of legislation at a time that's the last thing we need in this country, because we shouldn't turn in on each other and start drawing lines and sides, but to continue to work together. And that I think sometimes, and in this case it was an example, I think the threat of strike did get people around the table and focus hearts and minds, and did result in a good result for the benefit of the entire country. Thanks, Cahill.